Hi there. Here I am. How are you doing? Shit is crazy, huh? Make sure you get outside if you can. Touch some grass, get in the woods, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. Mainly me. That's right. Let's do it. Stand up. Yeah, we are off, and I've got you and you've got me, and we are joined today by the great Frank Figliuzzi, who is a former FBI agent you might know from MSNBC. He's written a bunch of books, and he is a regular commentator, and he is outraged at everything that's happening in his old agency, and it was really great to talk with him for the first time on the show. Still getting people on the show for the first time. Lots of new guests joining me, and I'm very, very excited to have you as always, because I can't do it without you. I hope to see you at tomorrow night's Hangout. I hope to see you in Las Vegas, March 28th through 30th. Get your tickets now. Learn more about what we're going to be doing together in the show links. All right. Wow. Yesterday was a crazy day in news. I've got your headlines and a whole bunch of audio clips in addition to my conversation with Frank, which, by the way, begins at about 31 minutes into today's show. But first, I've got today's helping of the good stuff. Thank you to longtime listener Paul Wesley, who sent in this poem for me to read and share with you, written by Navajo Indians of North America. It goes like this. Beauty is before me, and beauty behind me. Above me and below me hovers the beautiful. I am surrounded by it. I am immersed in it. In my youth, I am aware of it, and in old age, I shall walk quietly the beautiful trail. In beauty it is begun, in beauty it is ended. How about it? Yeah, I like that. That's good stuff, Paul. Thank you very much. I feel like that's a good way to start the show, good way to start your day if you're listening first thing in the morning like Kim Nyborg does in Iowa. She wrote that yesterday on Blue Sky as she listed her top 10 podcasts, including this as number 1. So good morning to you, Kim. Plenty of headlines to get to, and I'm going to do that right now. Let's jump right to it. Yesterday, the nomination for HHS Health and Human Services Secretary for RFK Jr. advanced to a full Senate vote. So did Tulsi Gabbard's nomination for Director of National Intelligence. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent assured Republican lawmakers that Elon Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency do not control the federal payment system, but we don't believe him. Also yesterday, the Trump administration drafted an executive order to dismantle the education department, so that could be next. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, they're trying to do the same thing to USAID with not enough resistance, it would seem, though people are doing everything they can. Trump acknowledges he needs congressional approval to fully eliminate the agency, and he's not probably going to get that, but that remains to be seen. Also, of course, the FBI provided the Trump Justice Department with details on 5,000 employees who worked on January 6 cases. I talked with Frank Figliuzzi about that because it prompted a pair of lawsuits from agents who argue the move violates their constitutional rights, exposes them to retaliation. More than 20,000 federal workers have apparently accepted the Trump administration's so-called buyout offer. And last night, Trump suggested that Palestinians have no alternative but to leave Gaza due to the destruction from Israel's war with Hamas. And he said that he's given advisors instructions to obliterate Iran if it assassinates him. So it was a pretty crazy evening. That's just a few of the headlines from last night alone. And I have to say, I feel like this is just an absolute crazy, insane statement and idea that Trump seems somewhat serious about in terms of developing the Gaza Strip into some type of a resort area or destination. But is it just a distraction so that he can let Elon Musk and his minions just pilfer the entire federal government? It's hard to know, but it's got to be addressed. I mean, the world reacted last night to his declaration that the U.S. could take over the Gaza Strip and its Palestinian population could be permanently displaced, immediately criticized in the Middle East and beyond. Of course, this is at a White House news conference with the Prime Minister of Israel just standing right there where he said the U.S. could take over the Gaza Strip and will do a job with it too, a job with it. The Gaza Strip, of course, been devastated by more than 15 months of war. He says it's going to be redeveloped and turned into the Riviera of the Middle East. Well, the leader of the Palestinian delegation in the United Nations said on social media, instead of being relocated to other countries, Palestinians in Gaza should be allowed to reclaim their own land and homes. Foreign Ministry of Saudi Arabia reacted with a statement. They said it was reaffirming its complete rejection of any infringement on the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people, whether through Israeli settlement policies, annexation of Palestinian lands, or attempts to displace the Palestinian people from their land. Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, said that Mr. Trump's proposal, which flies in the face of decades of debate of how to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, was meant to distract people from Elon Musk's sweeping attempts to downsize the U.S. government on Trump's behalf. Former Republican Congressman from Michigan, Justin Amash, whose family is of Palestinian origin, compared Mr. Trump's proposal to ethnic cleansing. If the United States deploys troops to forcibly remove Muslims and Christians, like my cousins, from Gaza, then not only will the U.S. be mired in another reckless occupation, but it'll also be guilty of a crime of ethnic cleansing. No American of good conscience should stand for this. It's a delusional idea. It's not going to be acceptable to any of the stakeholders outside of the Israelis in the region, and I just wanted to give you some of the reactions from around the world and here to it. We'll talk with experts, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this as well. All right, believe it or not, there is a whole bunch of other news, including a reaction from China countering Trump's dumb tariffs. Beijing struck back at the U.S. yesterday, moments after Trump's 10% tariff on all Chinese products took effect. The Chinese imposed a series of retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods, including gas, coal, farm machinery, and other products. Also opened up an antitrust investigation into Google. Trade experts suggested that China's response was carefully calibrated to do little short-term damage, while hinting at the full range of actions it could take against the U.S. should the trade dispute intensify. China's tariffs will not take effect until February 10th, leaving a week for the two sides to strike a deal similar to what Canada and Mexico achieved yesterday through different routes. The White House said that a call between Trump and China's leader was being scheduled. The president suggested that he's using tariffs as leverage to provoke China to do more to fight against fentanyl. And yesterday, the U.S. began sending migrants to Guantanamo Bay. The White House press secretary confirmed an operation to send migrants to Guantanamo Bay was underway. The president signed an order last week calling for the base to occupy 30,000 migrants. So we've got our first detention camp, and it is concentrated in Cuba. Marks a change in U.S. policy. The government has long held migrants picked up at sea in a building at the U.S. naval base in Guantanamo Bay, but it has not flown migrants there. And the president of El Salvador apparently offered to jail convicted criminals deported by the U.S. and including American citizens who are criminals to a prison detention facility in El Salvador, of course, that we would pay for. There was a horrific shooting in Sweden. Apparently, it was the worst shooting in the country's history. 10 people were left dead at an adult education campus. The suspect among the dead. Authorities releasing few other details, including the person's identity and possible motive. Terror is not believed to be a motive, apparently, according to early reports, but that's a horrible situation in Sweden, and their country is reeling over that from yesterday, of course. Other headlines, let's see. The U.S. having its mildest COVID winter yet, which I guess would be a piece of good news. There are plenty of other illnesses to go around, but this winter's COVID wave has been the gentlest to date, is the way it's written in the report I'm reading. And just 1 week before the Super Bowl, the NFL announced racism is over. That's right. The end racism signs that they had an end zone for the past few years, they're taking them off, apparently, for the Super Bowl. So now some people are suggesting you just don't watch it. Just boycott the Super Bowl as a result. Highly doubt folks will do that, but that was a pretty shitty thing to hear yesterday. And apparently Donald Trump Jr. has been accused of illegally hunting rare ducks in Italy. Italian activists are blasting Don Jr. for his actions. Environmentalists and local lawmakers have demanded an inquiry after claiming footage of a camouflaged Don Jr. showed him shooting at rare birds in a protected area. So, I mean, that's horrible. He's such a horrible person, and I'm glad Italy is getting a taste. All right, well, those are the headlines I've gathered for you from yesterday's news cycle, which really was a crazy one. And so take a minute, take a moment, take a breath, get centered, and recognize that change is constantly occurring. We don't know the consequences of any one of these actions, and uncertainty is the thing that really gets us in the end. So we really just don't know where any of this is going to go. Stay close, stay connected. And now let's get to some of the audio from yesterday. There are a whole bunch of people trying to do a lot of things. Yesterday I posted on Facebook and elsewhere all of those actions that are being taken, which is dozens of action. People apparently are going to their state capitals around the country today to have their voices heard and to protest. But there are all kinds of lawsuits being filed, and it's a question of how much the courts can handle, but there is sand being thrown in the gears. And well, here is Senator Elizabeth Warren yesterday pulling no punches and telling us exactly what is happening.
I just want to be clear about what's going on here. The system that makes sure that your granddad gets his Social Security check, the system that makes sure that your mom's doctor gets Medicare payment to cover her medical appointment, and the system that makes sure that you get the tax refund that you're owed has been taken over by Elon Musk. And every organization from your state government that uses federal money on that bridge project to the local Head Start that takes care of little kids while their mommies and daddies go to work is now at the mercy of Elon Musk. Elon just grabbed the controls of our whole payment system, demanding the power to turn it on for his friends or turn it off for anyone he doesn't like. Now, there's a second problem here. It's not just payments from the federal government that are now in Elon's control. Elon and his handful of friends now have full access to your personal and financial information that's in the system. Your payment history, your Social Security number, your bank account numbers.
All right. And now there's more to that, obviously, but let's get to the House, where a whole bunch of House Democrats were out front of the Treasury making as much noise as they can, including Maxwell Frost and Jasmine Crockett. Here's a little bit of them making a video outside of Treasury yesterday.
Congressman Maxwell Frost here with many of my colleagues. We're here because an unelected billionaire has access to the private information of our constituents, but we want answers.
Yeah, so it's Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett here, and let me tell y'all, oversight is going to do our job. So we are here because we need to understand why it is that our Department of Treasury has been broken into, and we need to go ahead and handle the person that decided that they were going to have the audacity to go after our information.
Seth Magaziner from Rhode Island, former state treasurer. We need to know who is in control of the Treasury, what their permissions are, what their intentions are, and what they want to do with your money and your identity. We need answers now.
What do we need?
I'm not sure they were all on message on what they needed right there at the end, which is not necessarily perfect, but hey, I'll take it. And now let's go outside USAID, where a USAID employee was talking to CBS News and had this to share.
Watched some people get fired, and I thought it was just them, and it turned out it was 60 senior people for USAID, and I watched it happen, and that was just absolutely heartbreaking. People who've given decades of their work to this kind of this work. I mean, they've given their lives. And then it kind of went really downhill, and Doge was in the building. We took down our pride flags. I took out any books I felt would be incriminating. No one was talking. We heard they started taking transcripts automatically of all of our Google Meets. They unplugged the news in the little kitchen galleys. It didn't feel good. And then Friday, we heard that Doge was here taking down the signs. And then Saturday, all of the websites went down. And then I lost complete access to my computer. My biggest fear is what I think most people whose works here, biggest fear is that millions of people are going to stop, getting the aid that we provide with less than 1% of the American, federal budget. It's unconscionable to think that people are dying because our work has stopped, even in the past 12 days. And it will continue to happen. There are people that will go without food. There are people that will go without disaster, recovery assistance. There are farmers who won't get fertilizer for their fields. There are people who will not have lights for their buildings. There are people who won't get vaccinations for basic needs. There are people who won't get HIV care, in the places we do PEPFAR. And thinking in my heart about all the people around the world who, with so little, relative little investment have so many positive outcomes.
Oh, yeah. Really well said. And that was a hard thing to hear. And I mean, I'm just beside myself. I'm not sure exactly what to think about that. The consequences, the repercussions are obviously already playing out. Whew. All right, let's get over to the Senate, where Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia had this to say about RFK's nomination and unfitness for the job of Secretary of Health and Human Services.
At a rally a few months ago, Donald Trump said that he was going to allow Mr. Robert Kennedy to, quote, go wild on health. Go wild. Of all the things that I can think of that I'd like to see a Secretary of Health and Human Services do, go wild is not on the list. Mr. Robert Kennedy is manifestly unqualified for the job he seeks. And in both my live and written questions for the record, he failed to commit to protecting access to affordable health care, failed to commit to protecting the people who are protecting us. The problem that the CDC has is that every day these noble civil servants and workers protect us from dangers that we don't see. And often you don't get credit for protecting people from things that they don't see. I simply do not trust him to oversee the CDC. He's unqualified, and I dare say everybody here knows it.
All right. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on Instagram, as she often has been doing, for like 15, 20 minutes, sometimes longer, explaining things. And it's very helpful. A lot of people watch this stuff and trust her. And so I wanted to give you an example, an excerpt of that. Go subscribe to her Instagram feed. Get on Instagram just for that one and listen to what she had to say about what's happening yesterday on her page.
So all of these people acting like, oh, we're going to set up an agency to identify waste, as though that's never been an idea before, like, take a number. These people, and I can tell you, in my experience, I have encountered many billionaires in my career. You all have seen many of those encounters in hearings, in other, forms of questioning, etc. I can tell you that this dude is probably one of the most unintelligent billionaires I have ever met or seen or witnessed.
All right, there you go, AOC. Just a little take and sample, because I want you to subscribe and listen to her and let me know what you think, what you disagree with, if anything, and would love to hear from you. On that and anything else, here is our friend Jasmine Crockett, who's been on the show a couple of times, and she was on TV, I think CNN, with Abby Phillip, and this went kind of viral yesterday because she is tired of the white tears.
Tired of the white tears. Listen, if you are competent, you are not concerned. When I walk into Congress every single day, you know why I don't feel a way and why you can't make me doubt who I am? Is because I know that I had to work 10 times as hard as they did just to get into the seat. When you look and you compare me to Marjorie Taylor Greene or me to Lauren Boebert, there is no comparison. And that is the life that we have always lived. So the only people that are crying are the mediocre white boys that have been beaten out by people that historically have had to work so much harder. This is why they don't want us to have education. This is why they are trying to literally say we won't fund the HBCUs, because they know that if they've already gone after affirmative action and they're saying, you know what, don't allow them to come into, say, these PWIs, as we call them, don't allow them to come into these institutions. We know why they created the HBCUs in the first place. It was because they wouldn't allow us into the white institutions. And so now they're not allowing us in. And now they're saying, you know what, we're also going to defund the HBCUs. You know why? Because they don't want any more Kamala Harrises. They don't want any more Jasmine Crockett's. But I got news for them. I don't care what they do. We will fight to the end to make sure that we get our due. Because again, if you want to talk about the people that shouldn't be in this country, you probably need to look in the mirror, because the last time I checked, the Native Americans who Summer ICE have been rounding up, or the Puerto Ricans who are absolutely Americans, listen, the only people that came and colonized this place are your ancestors, Trump,
Man, I am, if anything, my weird reaction is self-interested in how jealous I am at how good she is at those rants and giving them almost flawlessly. Speaking of white boys that are jealous of black women who are better at what I've been doing for a long time. And I mean, it's amazing how good she is at that. You think of the great radio stars, especially on the right, anybody who's good at just monologuing and really performing behind the mic like I'm trying to right now. You think of some of the best ones, and they're giving great performances. Obviously, I didn't really buy them. They weren't that interested in me, but I certainly buy hers. It's sincere, and she's just got such a great way with words, and I am always here for it and to hear from her in every response that she's got to give. Good stuff. Okay, now let's get to, this is from, I think, the Midas Touch YouTube channel. I've played this guy a couple times. He is a Canadian member of parliament. His name is Charlie Angus. And here's what he had to say about the end of the trade war, at least temporarily. It's certainly not over. I'll be talking to Canadian radio and television commentator Dean Blundell on tomorrow's show, it looks like. Really looking forward to talking to him. But here is Charlie Angus.
So we're really glad that we're not going into a trade war, but we're also feeling this was a moment to take this guy on. He blinked. He choked. He was 2 days ago, he was telling us that if we didn't give up our nationhood, the tariffs were going to stay on. And then we hit them with $125 billion worth of tariffs. And we started taking off the Kentucky booze off our shelves. Then we started to take off the California wines. Then we said, you're going to get another $25 billion right after that. And the market started to tank. And he suddenly said, oh, didn't you guys have a plan that was all ready to deal with the border like back in December? I love that. I'll take that. This is Mr. Art of the Deal.
All right, Charlie Angus, good stuff right there from him. And now I want to get to today's Black History clip. It is Black History Month, and we're observing it here at Stand Up, of course. And I thought this was a really great moment I found for this segment. It's Dwayne Wade and his wife, Gabrielle Union. She's an actor, producer. He is a three-time NBA champion, entrepreneur, and producer. And in 2023, the NAACP gave them the President's Award for the 54th NAACP Image Awards, presented in recognition of special achievement, distinguished public service. And they gave it to Gabrielle Union Wade and Dwayne Wade, who they say consistently utilize their platform to advance social justice and raise awareness to the inequalities existing in our country. Of course, they made headlines for their philanthropic efforts to support organizations providing health care for the LGBT community. That couple they continue to work to help raise money for the LGBTQ nonprofits and then bullying, discrimination in schools. The Wade Family Foundation providing relief to marginalized communities in need. Of course, they have proudly supported their trans daughter, Zaya, who came out as transgender at 12 and has become a well-known voice for the community. And so I wanted to share with you a little of their acceptance speech from that award 2 years ago, which I thought was inspiring.
Take this moment to publicly speak to our daughter, Zaya. Zaya, as your father, all I've wanted to do was get it right. I've sat back and watched how gracefully you've taken on the public scrutiny. And even though it's not easy, I watched you walk out of that house every morning as yourself. I admire how you've handled the ignorance in our world. I admire it that you face every day. To say that your village is proud of you is an understatement. Thank you for showing me that there's more than just one way to communicate effectively. You taught me that communication with my mouth isn't enough. I have to also communicate with my 2 ears and my 2 eyes. As your father, my job isn't to create a version of myself or direct your future. My role is to be a facilitator to your hopes, your wishes, and your dreams. Zaya, you've made me a better human just simply by being who you were born to be, our baby girl, Zaya Wade. So, baby, thank you for showing the world what courage looks like. I'm proud that I was chosen to stand in place as your father And thank you so much to the NAACP for this incredible honor.
Thank you, Derek and the NAACP. It's humbling to stand here surrounded by friends and heroes, OGs and icons, all working to advance the lives of Black people and pay respect to an organization that has led us through over a century of relentless challenge, pain, triumph, and change, and now stands with us again at the foot of a very new era of activism. A new era that demands our collective answer to one simple question. Will we fight for some, or will we fight for all of our people? Let's just name a couple hard truths. First, the intersection of Black rights and the rights of the LGBTQIA, trans, and gender nonconforming people continues to be rough. That's a huge understatement. Even as we demand equality at the top of our lungs, we consistently fail to extend our advocacy to protect some of our most vulnerable among us. And second, Black trans people are being targeted, terrorized, and hunted in this country. Every day, everywhere. And there's rarely a whisper about it. We honestly don't approach this work as activists or leaders as much as we do this as parents. Parents who love our children and will do whatever the hell we can to keep them seen and secure and safe. This is a conversation worth having in ways that can actually build bridges, right? That don't fan the flames of hatred or division. That don't enable lawmakers or justice systems to look the other way when Black trans people are under attack. They don't drive more young people to hate themselves or harm themselves. They don't cost people their lives. So we are humbled and we are hopeful for the future. We are hopeful that we may witness a real shift in the fight for justice. The moment the movement makes room for everyone. Everyone. Thank you.
All right. Well, there you go. A lot has transpired since that award show 2 years ago, but Dwayne and Gabrielle, I don't know why I'm saying like their first names like I know them. I just started laughing at myself. They've continued to advocate for their daughter, and I just thought that was an inspiring clip and wanted to share that with you. Very, very important. All right, and now it's time to get to some comedy. We've got to get to some laughs before we get to my conversation with Frank Figliuzzi. Let's head over to ABC and Jimmy Kimmel Live, which I watch his monologue pretty much every morning, and it makes me happy. So here it is, a little bit of it.
I'm not sure how to even start this show anymore because there are so many startlingly crazy things happening. It's like if you went to a buffet and instead of walking up with your plate to get food, they just launched it all at you at once. And you're like, mashed potato, corn. It has now been 15 years since Donald Trump took office. 15 days? Oh, my God. Last night I mentioned that the Tariff of Nottingham had agreed to back off on the 25% taxes he slapped on Mexican and Canadian goods after getting what he called concessions from the Mexican president and the Canadian prime minister. Trump claims his goal is to stop the flow of immigrants and narcotics into our country. 21,000 pounds of fentanyl came through our southern border with Mexico in 2024, which is lower than it used to be, but it's still a lot. Now, you want to guess how many pounds came through our northern border with Canada? How many pounds of fentanyl? 43. 43, about 1/7 of a Donald Trump worth of fentanyl. But he slapped tariffs on Canada anyway, and then called them off after Justin Trudeau signed what was described as a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and we'll be backing it with $200 million, which is not that much money. The Toronto Blue Jays offered Juan Soto $760 million, and he still went to the Yankees. But Trump is calling, or the Mets, rather, God forbid, is calling this... I don't know what happened. I'm really discombobulated. Trump's calling this a major victory, and he's sending his minions out to claim it for him.
He called this off, saying that he had won concessions from both of them, but is there a tangible concession in your view?
Yeah, absolutely. He won the concessions, and part of it is it's a commitment from Trudeau that wasn't there to help with fentanyl, to help with the black market,
he announced the plan,
and to secure the border.
He announced that plan, though, 6 weeks ago, back in December.
Well, at least he's reiterated it and formalized it.
That's right. Under President Trump, our allies will be reiterating in their boots from now on. Next, his plan is he's going to force France to give us the Statue of Liberty. Won't that be nice? The art of the deal. Trump's also doubling down on this idea that Canada would agree to become our 51st state, as if Drake hasn't been through enough this week. But
all right, there you go. Jimmy Kimmel Live last night. And what has Drake been through? I wasn't paying attention. Did he lose to Kendrick Lamar? Is that what happened? Was it a Grammys related story? I don't know. I have not followed either of their work, much less the dispute between the two of them. Okay, now it is time to get to my guest. He is joining us here on Stand Up for the first time ever. And I know Frank from my days on panels with him at MSNBC, as well as his appearances at our mutual friend Glenn Kirshner's events, Justice Matters events that he holds every August. And Frank is a real good guy who I have enjoyed talking to off the air, so I was happy to get him right here on the record. He, of course, is a national security expert. He spent 25 years as a special agent in the FBI, where he directed all espionage investigations across the government. He's also the author of the national bestseller, The FBI Way, Inside the Bureau's Code of Excellence. He is an NBC News national security contributor, and you can listen to his podcast and support him in all of the other ways on social media and YouTube and elsewhere. Right now, let's do it with plenty to talk about with Frank Figliuzzi for the first time on Stand Up. Oh, there he is. Everybody knows him, but this is the first time he's been here with me. But we've hung out several times. We have mutual friends, and I wouldn't say there's mutual respect. I don't think I have any credibility, but I have a lot of respect for you.
I respect what you're doing and your humor and your humanity and anything else I can think of.
I'll take all that. That's fine. That's enough. That's as good as it can get. So it's great to talk to you. You've been in a lot of demand right now because of the chaos at your former agency, the FBI. Where are we as we speak here on Tuesday night when there seems to be a purge? It would seem to be there were questions asked in Kash Patel's hearing about whether or not there would be political retribution. And you said in your recent MSNBC column they should bring him back up for questioning because there already has been, because the Trump administration, acting Attorney General, I think, demanded that anybody involved with the J6 investigations, any agent, which could be hundreds if not thousands, that they all be named and then maybe purged, Frank?
Yeah. You're right. About every 5 minutes, something changes here. But the breaking news this afternoon has been that 2 lawsuits have been filed, one by the FBI Agents Association, representing virtually every single special agent in the FBI. The other is a class action lawsuit by the affected FBI agents. And you're right, it's between 4,000 and 6,000 FBI agents who worked the January 6 cases that they were assigned to work. They did their job. And for that, we have acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, whose claim to fame, by the way, is that he was Trump's defense attorney. As an aside there, I don't hear anyone asking whether Mr. Bove is still getting paid his legal fees from representing Trump, because last time I looked at the SEC filings of the PAC that's paying Trump's legal fees, they still owed Mr. Bove's law firm over $800,000. So you think that's a conflict of interest, that the Deputy Attorney General needs about $1 million that Trump still hasn't paid him?
Frank, I love that you still want to call out conflicts of interest. Isn't that cute?
I know it's an obsolete term, but it's a retro concept.
Actually, let's not normalize acting like it's not important. It is important. Conflict of interest matter. You investigated corruption, which we can talk about. What's the attitude of inside the FBI right now? As a hardcore lefty, I've always been especially irked by the idea that the right has painted the FBI as these deep state, liberal, mamby-pamby Democrats, because they're far more likely to be conservative and even Trump supporters, but they were just doing their job. You don't get to pick which investigation you want to do when you're an FBI agent. So what are you hearing from those that are at risk right now, or losing their jobs, or being purged, investigated, or having their names be put out there and their families be put out there? Now these J6ers that got pardoned could come hunt them down.
Yeah, this is for real. It's one thing for field agents to look at the purge at headquarters, the top layer of management, and say, it's a bunch of suits. I don't know those guys. Well, it's another thing entirely where we're looking at potentially thousands of agents being asked to give their names. And by the way, the FBI, kind of an interesting twist today, turned over all of the information they were demanded to turn over, but did not include the agents' full names. They included only their employee ID numbers. So, it's something. It's a form of resistance temporarily. But more importantly, they're all on board for these court cases to ask a court to tell DOJ to cease and desist. Think about that in the history of our country. The FBI, a part of the DOJ, is suing the DOJ for unlawful activity. Never before in our history. The agent cadre is demoralized. They're wondering. Most of the agents, of course, aren't eligible yet for retirement. They're looking at losing their pension, losing a paycheck. And for how long? Yes, they might win in court, of course. But how long will it take for this to go all the way to the Supreme Court as a test of executive powers and whether or not a president can fire literally any federal employee at will? It's the demise of the rule of law. I'll point out, not to be overdramatic, because this is the real deal, most of these agents worked the January 6 cases from their assignments on joint terrorism task forces, known as JTTFs. Every single field office has one. They keep us safe between, peace and terror attack. And if you're going to essentially delete the resources of JTTFs around the country, you are leaving us wide open for attack.
Well, if the resources are humans, actual agents across all of these offices, I can't imagine how important, number one, institutional knowledge is. So when you get rid of people who've been there for a long time, then, some new agent doesn't even know where their stapler is, much less whether or not this guy was investigated for a previous crime where he tried to blow up people at a mall. Like, I would think that that's such an important issue. So talk a little bit more about the security issues. The FBI does all kinds of different things, and reading your resume, it looks like you did just about all of them. So give us some scenarios that you're most concerned about if you start firing agents who, by the way, were paid. Their training took huge amounts of money to invest in, time and money, and then you're just going to get rid of all that education and all that experience, and then there's a hiring freeze, as you so aptly wrote in your column. So you're not even replacing them. How dangerous is this?
Yeah, there's no backfill coming. If you go, well, good, the plan is to replace all these knuckleheads with MAGA FBI agents. It does take up to 2 years, even longer, to do the background, to get you through the academy at Quantico and get you on board. And then, as you said, you're simply trying to find your way to the restroom for the first few weeks in the office. Where's my car? Where's the bathroom? Right? And now, the experience level, even for the senior agents at headquarters who got all the executive assistant directors got walked out, all of them, decades upon decades of experience. And you may say, well, so what? The so what is that this whole domino effect occurs, right? You have to move somebody up into an acting EAD, which means it's probably the AD, which means somebody has to move into the assistant director as acting until you get people who absolutely don't know the role that they're supposed to be filling. And that is a huge leadership gap and experience gap that I am certain foreign intelligence services will exploit. I would, if I heard that this was going on in the Russian services or the Chinese, I'd be all over it, exploiting it. And so will the terror organizations.
Is this something that is in any way normal to dismiss? Or, I mean, I'm sure they don't get fired. They're not political appointees. The heads of these offices, were they fired, Frank?
Yeah, they were.
These are guys that worked in the FBI for decades, and they were just fired?
Yeah, it went like, the discussion went like this. You can retire if you're eligible, but you got to do it by like Monday. You can resign if you want to, which is, your choice, or I'll fire you. And all three of the above happened with the most senior layer of the FBI.
Have you talked? Do you know any of those guys? Have you talked to any of them?
Yeah.
What's the reaction to that? What do they say about that? There's got to be, and then all the guys working for him. I mean, I remember, say what you will about James Comey, it seemed like he was pretty well respected by the people that worked at the FBI when he was dismissed by a tweet. And Robert Mueller and the previous. So like, don't these guys have guys that look up to them? I mean, you talked about the demoralization, but that word does a lot of work there. But unpack it. It actually means something to people.
What's really kind of heartwarming, I suppose, is I get calls from people who go, "You don't understand how respected this woman was or this man was that just got walked out the door." By the time you get to executive assistant director, you've got a huge network of people throughout the field that you've supervised and worked with throughout the years, right? And you're probably not an asshole. It's rare. Because you got to network and get to that position. So people are astounded. There's one story involving a woman who's a non-agent. She was an executive assistant director over like administrative functions, technology, records management, beloved by everybody. 33 years in the Bureau, but because she's not an agent, she still isn't eligible for retirement. She had 2 more years to go, and she begged not to get fired, and they fired her, and she's beloved. And so they're all pissed. They're all going to sue. But you raise an interesting point. It's not just about them. It's about everybody looking at that and going, this is an injustice. So what Kash Patel could walk into is a scenario where he's already pissed off 37,000 employees. Good luck with that.
I mean, I don't know anything about any of this, but I can imagine that many of those agents and many of those people were working on more than one case, maybe multiple cases, and then they just put it down and walk out. What happens to their work? What happens to those cases?
Understand what an executive assistant director means. So I was the assistant director for counterintelligence. I oversaw all counterintelligence investigations actually not only in the FBI, but the whole U.S. government, because that's how the FBI works with espionage. I answered to an executive assistant director who had multiple divisions under him. So I answered to the National Security EAD, who had counterterrorism, counterintelligence, all overseas operations, right? Then there's another EAD who has criminal, cyber, and critical incident response, hostage rescue team. I could keep going. They're all gone. So you say, did they work more than one case? No, they oversaw billions of dollars and millions of cases in multiple divisions underneath them at headquarters.
I don't even know how to comprehend the consequences of that. Obviously, the FBI has never gone through anything remotely like this, right? Like, we're not going to find out that I'm just being biased and I haven't looked at the history of the agency and the politics around, administration changes and transitions.
The closest we've come to, and it's not even close, was Watergate and the whole deep throat era, where the number 2 guy in the FBI, Mark Felt, ended up getting charged, by the way, for illegal wiretaps and et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And so did an assistant director. And that was it.
It's terrifying what that means for national security. Tell us, you worked on corruption cases for a while. That word, again, doesn't mean, like a lot of other important words, democracy, integrity, all the words that were painted over. Where was that? That picture you put out went absolutely viral. Before I get to that question about corruption, what about that picture? They're painting over all these words at an FBI office.
So the FBI has core values that are everywhere. They're on the website. They're on everywhere. The photo you're referring to is from the New York Times. I posted it on my Instagram account. And it shows someone, a worker, painting over the FBI's core values that are on the wall at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. Those words include integrity, adherence to the Constitution, leadership, compassion, fairness, and diversity. That's all getting painted over. And how symbolic is that photo regarding what's going on today? And look, you can fall down however you want on DEI. I don't even need to have that discussion. I'm just going to tell you from a street level in the FBI, try doing a surveillance in the inner city with two middle-aged white guys in a sedan. Try that. See if that works. Been there, done that. Try being an undercover agent to penetrate a Middle Eastern terror organization as a white guy. It doesn't work.
You need people from every single ethnic background, speaking every language, worshiping every god. Diversity, I would imagine, is the strength to the FBI, especially, as you said, in all kinds of different offices across the country. It's a huge asset. Without it, everybody just looks like a Mormon.
Well, yes, and it doesn't work. It's not effective. And we've discovered that years ago in the FBI when we were trying, all of a sudden things blew up, literally bombs going off every day, Black Panthers and all of these organizations. And we had no sources there, but white guys in wingtip shoes weren't going to develop informants in the Black Panthers. And it's just the reality of the story. That's how it goes.
So that issue around diversity is one that we could put that to bed in terms of the importance that there is to the FBI. Just real quick on that, the politics. When you're in a field office, when you're at, I don't know, a stakeout, whatever you guys do or did, and you're talking amongst yourself, how often did it get political? I mean, I'm guessing that they're law enforcement. They lean conservative, but I mean, I would imagine a lot of them are Trump supporters that are actually being dismissed as well.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, carrying a gun and badge generally means you're there to preserve the status quo, which generally means you're probably conservative. And that's been my experience with the Bureau, of course. And with regard to the politicization, I got to tell you, it's the most apolitical group I've ever met. And there's rules for everything in the FBI, but one of the rules is you can't post any kind of election material on your cubicle. You can't walk around with a button, except it might say, I voted. That's about it. It's not what we talk about around the water cooler. The water cooler is, are you playing hoops at lunchtime? What are you doing this weekend? How are the kids? All of that. How's your case going? That's it. That's the organization that I lived.
But did it change? Did anything change during Trump's first administration? Certainly after, and all the investigation into him, when he began to criticize the FBI, or actually even when he was in office. I remember that Helsinki meeting with Putin, where he threw the intel agencies under the bus and agreed with Putin over them. Like, did at some point the attitude towards this guy change because he was constantly criticizing the important work that they don't get any credit for every day? Did eventually they flip at least on him, even though they're still conservative, probably likely Republican, and lean that way? Did they think, listen, after January 6th, this guy, he does not support us or our work?
Yeah, fascinating phenomenon that I saw take place from the outside looking in. We do have Trump to blame for not only dividing this country, but yes, for wreaking havoc on the FBI personnel, because that began this dialogue that never before existed in the hallways, right? Hey, what's up with Trump? Why did he fire Comey? We liked Comey. Well, maybe we did something wrong. Did we do something wrong? And then he's the one who generated all of this. And then, look, it didn't help, and I talk about this in my first book, The FBI Way. It didn't help that Comey had that horrible press conference, at FBI headquarters and said, no reasonable prosecutor would prosecute Hillary Clinton. That was a disaster. He's not a prosecutor. He was the head of the FBI. That decision's made at the DOJ across the street. Then, of course, on the eve of the election, he announces, well, we opened another case on Hillary. No, we closed the case. We didn't find anything. What a freaking mess. So that handed Trump an excuse. And then he tees off on the FBI.
That's right.
And then by the time they got to a serious discussion at high levels about whether or not to execute a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, the head of the Washington field office was going, no, I'm not doing that. I just saw Andy Comey walk out the door. I just saw Andrew McCabe walked out the door. Pete Strzok walked out the door. I'm not doing that. So, yeah, it's been now politicized.
Yeah, that's terrible, really, for all the obvious reasons. What do you think about, what are your take on this Kash Patel? He is not even remotely qualified, and he has clearly been picked to carry out Trump's every whim and every order and every retribution. So how dangerous is this guy? What are your thoughts on him?
I think so. I think everybody would guess my thoughts, which is he can't be confirmed. He cannot be confirmed. But
he's going to be confirmed, though. He's going to be confirmed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, he was voted out of committee. Yes. So that now it's going to go. Yeah. The entire partisan ways. He's going to show up. He's already told us who he is and what he's going to do. And we're going to see a very fascinating thing that people don't realize the power an FBI director has. Why do I say that? You don't have to open certain cases. You can close certain cases. You can decide whether predication looks right to you to open a case or not. And if you combine with Pam Bondi at DOJ, who's your boss, you can do whatever Trump wants you to do. And that is what we're going to see. And if you thought the J. Edgar Hoover era of illegal wiretaps on Black Panthers, Martin Luther King, all planting evidence in microphones without court order, if you think that was bad, stand by.
One of the things that I've always been happy the FBI does is they investigate these anti-government, anti-federal government people, from the Bundy boys to the Ruby Ridge to the David Koresh to the Oath Keepers and the rest. And now it would seem that those far-right, white supremacist, Christian nationalist type organizations are maybe working with the administration. Trump invites Stuart Rhodes. We get what he's doing there, but it makes you wonder whether or not Kash Patel's FBI is going to be investigating. The Department of Justice apparently is getting rid of the entire Civil Rights Division or changing it to investigate how white folks are being discriminated against or something. But say a bit about, are you concerned about those types of organizations not being investigated or infiltrated by the federal government? These are American homegrown terrorist organizations oftentimes.
We may have seen our last domestic terrorism case opened at the FBI.
Come on.
Who's going to open that case? Who's going to open that case? No. And as for civil rights, you're right. They've already made an announcement. They don't know if they're even going to have a civil rights unit at DOJ. We may have seen our last civil rights case in terms of a color of law, excessive use of force by the police, discrimination practices.
Don't you have undercover agents right now in the middle of the woods somewhere with some whole bunch of rednecks talking about, doing terrible things to brown people or Jewish people? Isn't that currently happening, I hope?
Sure. And I think that those undercover agents and also informants are at risk right now, risk of having someone tip off somebody that those people are under.
Finally, corruption. That's again a word that I feel like people just don't understand. They don't get concerned with. You investigate it at all kinds of levels. But inside the current government right now, this president and the people he's appointing and the types of corruption that we're already seeing, obviously Elon Musk inside the Treasury Department. My general question is, what are your concerns about federal government corruption with the Trump and the people he's appointed right now? What are you looking at?
So we've got a flipped coin here. We're going to be looking at unprecedented levels of corruption in the Trump administration, particularly with oligarchs doing illegal things everywhere. And we're going to have, flip side of that coin, no one's going to want to open those cases. You think Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are going to open cases against Elon Musk and everybody else who's getting paid off? How about the people, this Trump meme coin with his photo on it? That's called open bribery. If you want something done in the administration, pick up the phone or call your broker and tell them, I want 100 Trump coins. And then you tell the president, hey, I took care of you. I need some help with this project.
I actually already did that. I got 2.
Yeah, I want to know the project that you wanted help with. That's what I want to know. Yeah.
I can't tell.
So corruption. Look, we already have seen a case dropped. There's a former congressman out in the middle of the country somewhere that had a corruption case on him. That's been dropped. He's a Republican, friend of Trump's. Eric Adams, mayor of New York City, very valuable position for the president to have in his pocket, went down to Mar-a-Lago, kissed the ring. And even though he's a Democrat, there's reports that DOJ is considering dropping his corruption case. We're not going to see cases opened on Republicans unless they go sideways with Trump.
Unless they go sideways with Trump, it's a good point. Tell me something that will make me happy, and then I'll let you go.
So someone recently said you don't need a machine to fight a machine. You just need a handful of sand. And I think the handful of sand to screw up this administration and slow down the unlawful activity is already being thrown in the form of numerous lawsuits, requests for injunctive relief, class actions, not just at the FBI, but across the Department of Education, the USAID, the Treasury, OPM, and the court system is going to get jammed with cases. And you're going to see judges saying, yeah, you can't do this. As we just saw with a Reagan-appointed federal judge who said on a birthright citizenship challenge, yeah, this is the most blatantly unconstitutional thing I've ever seen, right? So we're going to see that resistance take shape. And Congress is planning to do some pretty cool things in the next week or two, including demanding that Kash Patel and Pam Bondi come back to the Hill, that Emil Bove, the acting DAG, come to the Hill and explain who is it exactly ordering you to fire these FBI agents? Please tell us.
That's a really good question that we'll probably never get the answer to, but I hope we do. Frank, you're a national treasure. So happy that you joined me here. You look great, by the way. You look great. I didn't even mention that. Your skin looks great. You look like you're taking good care of yourself in these times.
Smoke and mirrors, man. You too, from what I can see with this glare off of that. But yes, I see it. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank. Really appreciate you, man. And there you have it, Frank Figliuzzi. Go support him. Go follow him, frankfigliuzzi.com. And follow him, support him on Blue Sky and everywhere else. On Instagram, you can see that picture that he mentioned if you follow him on Instagram. I'm sure he will be back, and let him know that you heard him here. Go let him know, because he's a first-timer. That's a big deal. Let him know that you enjoyed hearing him, and if you've got any questions, etc. All right, that's it. That's all I've got for you on today's episode of Stand Up. Thank you so much for your support, for listening, and support us on patreon.com/Pete Dominick. Join us for the weekly hangouts anytime on the Discord platform. Follow me on all the social media outlets, and write a rating and review of this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. John Carroll writes and performs all the music. Go buy his stuff, johncarroll.org. Be the change you want to see in the world. Take a moment for yourself, and I will talk to you tomorrow, you bumblebees. Be good to yourself.
To let in some light, you got